Good evening, everyone. I guess we can get started now. It is a bit past time. It's messy weather, but I don't think we'll have too many stragglers. And it looks like we're pretty much full, given the a little bit better. How about that? It's full volume at my end. Yeah, I'll just speak this loud. Does that help? Everyone hear me now? Okay. I haven't normally had this problem with the system. It almost always works, but maybe the batteries are low. But anyway, thanks for everyone being here. If you're wondering if you're in the right spot, this is a public open house to learn more about the Elgin Street Gosport proposed development at the end of Elgin Street. And tonight is not a statutory meeting under the Planning Act. It's not necessarily a council meeting. This is an opportunity by the proponent of the development to get information out at a very early stage. We have limited capacity, so that's why we've had the chairs set up in this way, and we want to achieve the COVID protocols. So we'll try and keep our masks on and maintain our distancing. You know the routine, so we'll all acknowledge that and do our best to do so. To allow for as much room as possible for everyone, council is tuning in via a live stream YouTube page on the municipal website. So they are observing and hearing what you have to say. So it's not that they haven't showed interest. They certainly have in working with staff and speaking to staff about this, because they're presumably hearing it from you as well. So, but they are observing through the live stream via the municipal website. So I've indicated this is not a statutory public meeting as per the Planning Act requirements. This is above and beyond that. That will be held when and if a complete application is submitted. So by complete, we mean all the requirements of the official plan and the provincial policy as dictated, the studies that need to be done, background work that needs to be done to justify the rationale for development. That is, our understanding is underway, but it's needed to be done before we can accept any application. And so that application is still outstanding, but your comments and opinions will help inform that application and shape that application as you will hear more about. Any comments you provide tonight are really encouraged to be in a written form. So I think I see papers in people's hands. So you've picked up the comment form on your way in. That really helps us be organized at our end to help itemize all the comments. And so we can, in a very orderly and efficiently way, respond to your comments and pass those on to the proponent. So I appreciate if you have any thoughts or opinions or comments, please complete your comment form and get that into us. We have received some comments in some informal chat prior to the meeting, so all good stuff. So we just want to be able to not miss any comments, and so the form is very helpful in us achieving that. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'll just finish my little ramble here, and then everyone will have a chance to say something. Yeah. So just give a bit of a lowdown for how things are to unfold tonight. So I didn't introduce myself. I'm the Director of Planning of the municipality. My name is Paul Walsh, and we have Mr. Josh Berry, Manager of Approvals. Josh will be giving some overview of the planning process. He's an expert in approvals, and so he'll give us some insights on that, some of the processes and requirements of the Planning Act. And further tonight is our planner, Samantha Deck. She's also a tech wizard and set up everything here tonight, and she can also field some of your questions if you need to bend additional ears. And to my left is the proponents of the application, is pending application, is Mr. Kent Randall, the land use planning consultant, a registered professional planner with the firm EcoView Consulting out of the city of Peterborough. So I think, pardon me? There are no minutes per se. Any comments, of course, use that application form, but yeah, there won't be any minutes. Yeah. I don't think we're recording tonight, are we, Samantha?
No, we're not recording. We're just live streaming right now just for council members so that they're able to view the meeting, but it won't be necessarily recorded for our municipal YouTube page.
Well, we also had requests not to record for personal privacy. So that was the decision made to, that was the first comment we had. If anybody has a phone on them, they want to record, that's fine. But I think it's best to maybe make your objections in writing. So no, I mean, writing is the proper way to do it. It becomes a formal record that way. Verbally, you know, we can capture things in video, I suppose, but the best and more efficient way is through a written record.
So just if I may, this meeting is being recorded by default. Hello? Does that work? Yeah, sorry. So what I was going to say is this meeting is being recorded by default on YouTube. So there will be a record. It's just a question of whether we post it on the municipal webpage or not. So we'll review that internally and get back to everyone. But yes, it is set up. So the record is there. It's just a question of whether it goes on a public website or not. So your comments will be recorded, just so you're aware.
Thanks, Josh. Why don't you maybe just take it away from here? I think in the presentation, at this point in the presentation, you're going to give us the overview of the planning process. So tonight, after the presentations, everyone will have a chance for a question and answer. And so there'll be 5 minutes allocated to each person coming forward with their questions and comments. And concluding that 5-minute opportunity, if everyone has spoken, wanted to have a word or two to say, then there can be you can have a follow-up if you wish, but make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. Have your 5 minutes and let the next person go. So what I hope to accomplish tonight, I think what we all want to accomplish tonight is that we all get heard. And so to have a really productive meeting, we need to have an equal measures of sharing our thoughts and doing the same when we listen to others. And so at the end of the night, hope to say that what characterized this meeting is mutual respect and courtesy and an overall product of session. So on that, hope that sets the feeling for tonight. And so Josh, if you want to give us the presentation on the planning matters.
Good evening. Thank you for making the time to attend tonight's meeting. So I'm just going to give an overview of the development review process. Those of you who attended the virtual meeting will be familiar with this. I'll just go over these steps again to make sure everyone has a clear understanding of the path forward for the development proposal. So Sam, would you mind just going to the next slide? So the purpose of the presentation is to provide the public with an overview of the development review process. Staff will also identify the different stages that the public has an opportunity to participate in the review of the development proposal. So as Paul has alluded to, and as we had mentioned at our last meeting, there's several different stages that a development application has to go through in Ontario under the Planning Act. Not all municipalities require pre-consultation, but the municipality of Brighton does require pre-consultation by bylaw. So that's where we are right now. We're in the pre-consultation stage. The pre-consultation stage is to identify the application requirements and to present a general concept to the public for review. The applicant will then submit a complete application, which includes the various technical studies, reports, and plans that need to be reviewed by different internal departments, agencies, and ministries. The review and comments by municipal staff will take place during this period. There'll also be a statutory public meeting to receive formal comments from the public on record with members of council there. And then there will be a revised submission to address all those comments. And then the application will be taken to council to make a decision. So council is the decision-making body for applications. I apologize if this is a bit blurred. I'm not used to this speaker system, but I'll try my best to make it clear. So the proponent is currently in the pre-consultation stage of the development review process. The purpose of the pre-consultation stage is to confirm the requirements for complete application, as I had mentioned, to receive initial comments from the public, municipal staff, and agency staff. And the pre-consultation information stage helps inform the requirements for complete application of the Planning Act. So what do we mean by complete application? So staff and agencies determine the information required for a complete application as in accordance with provincial and municipal policy. So that includes the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Golden Horseshoe Plan, the Northumberland County official plan, and the municipality of Brighton official plan. Staff and agencies also identify preliminary issues to be addressed as part of the pre-consultation review. Staff receive comments from the public in order to consider the review of the applications. The applicant will be required to respond to the comments received tonight as part of the complete application submission. So based on a preliminary review of the policies that are in effect, we've identified some preliminary issues. So there's the impact on the natural environment, the adjacent provincially significant wetland, the compatibility of the built form, that means the housing type and massing type with adjacent properties, the impacts of construction and development on existing properties, the increased traffic as a result of development, privacy and screening from existing properties, and of course, the municipal sanitary and municipal water system. I'm sorry, what's that, ma'am? Oh. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So complete information requirements. So I just mentioned the preliminary issues that we had identified. So how are these issues addressed? There's several reports, studies, and plans that are requested as part of complete application. There's the planning justification report, which is prepared by a registered professional planner and consists of a comprehensive review of the policies that are in effect. An environmental impact study that's prepared by a professional ecologist and reviewed by professional ecology staff at Lower Trent Conservation Authority. There's a tree inventory and tree conservation plan, which is prepared by a professional arborist. There's a preliminary landscape plan, which is prepared by a professional landscape architect. A phase 1 environmental site assessment, which is prepared by a qualified person under the Record of Site Conditions Act. Functional servicing and stormwater report, i.e. a servicing study that's prepared by a civil engineer. Traffic impact study, again, prepared by a traffic engineer. Archaeological assessment, prepared by an archaeologist and reviewed by the Ministry of Tourism, Sports, and Culture. Geotechnical investigation report, prepared by a geotechnical engineer, and site plans and building elevations, usually prepared by a planner and in some cases, an architect. So once the application is submitted, the applicant will review and address the comments received at tonight's meeting. The applicant will be submitting a zoning bylaw amendment. There is a zoning change. The lands will be changing from future development to a R3 zone, which Kent will go over in detail. The applicant will be submitting a site plan control application as well once the ZBA has been looked at. Once the application has been deemed complete, a public meeting will be scheduled to provide the public and council with an opportunity to review and comment on the development. So that's a formal statutory meeting under the Planning Act that is held with members of council and the mayor. Next meeting. So as I mentioned, the statutory public meeting will be held once everything has been submitted. And it provides the public and members of the council a formal opportunity to comment on the application. No decisions will be made at the statutory public meeting. It's an opportunity for the public to provide additional comments once the complete applications have been received. So the public can comment not just on the concept plan, but the engineering studies, environmental studies, et cetera. It also gives council the ability to ask questions of the applicant and planning staff. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the complete application comes in to the planning department. Under the Planning Act, municipal staff have 30 days to deem the application complete. Once the application has been deemed complete, a statutory public meeting must be held no sooner than 20 days. So there'll be a 20-day circulation period for the public to be notified, and agencies and ministries that are required to be circulated. The municipality Brighton official plan provides direction on the review of applications, including compatibility, density, and build form. Lower Trent will be reviewing the environmental impact study and the engineering drawings. Next slide, please. So the applicant will be required to address comments received by municipal staff and agency staff. The applicant will also be required to provide a summary of how public comments received at the public meeting have been addressed. And a council meeting will then be held to make a decision on the application. Notice of decision will then be mailed to the applicant, agencies, and anyone who has requested written notification for the decision. Next. So here's the public participation we've done so far. As Paul has mentioned, this is not statutorily required under the Planning Act, but we are trying to encourage public participation as much as we can here in the municipality of Brighton. So we've had a virtual community open house on October 7th, 2021. This is the in-person meeting, November 30th, 2021. And the statutory public meeting is to be determined depending on when the complete application is submitted. Public can provide comments at any time prior to the final council decision meeting to planning@brighton.ca. Next slide, please. That's it. So I'm going to turn it over to Kent Rendell, who is the applicant's registered professional planner, and he'll provide you details on the concept plan, which I'm sure is what everybody would like to see and review. So Kent, take it from here.
Thanks, Josh. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kent Randall. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm the principal planner at EcoView Consulting Services. So we're the planner and agent for the applicant and landowner. May I? So we are the agent and applicant for the, or we're the agents for the applicant and landowner. Next slide, please. Next slide, that's fine, I know who I am. So the proposal, what are we proposing on this site? Well, it's a 32 units in a townhome form or townhouse form. There's clusters of 4 units each. And we'll get to where the plan is in the slides, but the gist is that it is a plan of condominium. So it's a standard condominium with common elements, meaning the driveway, parking areas, and everything around the units themselves is held in a common element as part of the condominium corporation. So it's not going to be a municipal road that's going to be extended from Elgin Street. As I've shown up here, 4-unit clusters throughout the property. The units along the north side of the access road are 3 stories, and there is a unit just to the south of the cul-de-sac that's going to be 2 stories. We have we're showing on the plan right now 2 parking spaces per unit. I know at the previous virtual, I'm not sure if anybody was at the previous virtual open house, but there were quite a few comments about parking. So we have made that change. We haven't made any major changes beyond that. We still want to hear what people have to say, of course. But we did make that change as we didn't note that there were garages. So there is tandem parking for each of the units. So there are actually 2 units two spaces per unit. In addition, we added some visitor parking. So there are actually, in addition to those 2 per unit, there's 32 visitor spaces. We've also shown some landscaping and pedestrian walkways. The idea would be that the southern portion of the site south of the access road would be landscaped with berming and other trees and shrubs to provide some visual buffers. Next slide, please. So the subject lands, and I'm sure everybody here knows where they're located. There's actually 3 properties that are part of that make up the subject lands. It's in Gosport, just off of Elgin Street and north of Price Street, and just west of the Presqu'île Yacht Club. Existing residential development, of course, to the south and the west, Yacht Club to the east. And a portion of the property contains a portion or part of the Presqu'île Bay, Presqu'île Bay provincially significant wetland, just at the very northern portion of it. There's also floodplain and wave uprush areas located on the northern portion of the site. Next slide, please. Here's the site location. For those who don't know, I also have a blow up of that over here, in case you want to look at that after. It has a nice air photo on there so you can see everything around it. Next slide, please. So I guess one of the main questions would be why this site? So from a planning perspective, the municipality's official plan has identified this area as an area for development, for residential development. It's located with, well, that's what the municipal official plan says. It's located within the intensification boundary. So that's an area that's considered to be the built up area of the municipality. And that in particular is under the growth plan and under the municipality's official plan. It's been identified to accommodate 42% of the municipality's growth within the next 20 years. So it's an area where intensification has been identified. So that combined with the designation in the municipal official plan makes it a site from a planning perspective in the official plan as an ideal site for residential development. Preliminary evaluations of the site from a constraint perspective show that there is a large portion that's beyond those constraints that I mentioned, the floodplain, wetland, and as well as their setbacks, to provide a suitable building envelope for these units. In fact, we've got quite a bit of open space between them that we can provide, enough that we could provide additional parking if we needed to. Right, so I can just show you the map in a second. So actually, if you go to the next slide, Samantha. Okay, so this is Schedule A from Brighton's official plan. So you can see the lot is outlined there with the black dotted line. So that brighter color is a designation, and that color is associated with the residential designation. So residential designation, within that designation, the municipality permits residential development, varying densities, low, medium, and high density. This is considered what we put in here, a low density development, 22 units per hectare. And that's in the official plan. Those are the parameters in the OP. We didn't make those up. So up to 30 units per hectare is considered to be low density. And so this map, this excerpt that we've shown here is the primary map from the municipality's official plan. And the official plan provides a 20-year outlook for growth in the municipality. It's this guiding document, planning document. If you don't mind, I'll just get through everything and then maybe we can have questions after that. And so when I was referring to the intensification boundary, so that thick red line is the intensification boundary. So the middle portion is located within it. It doesn't necessarily have to be within that intensification boundary in order to be developed for residential. However, that does provide us with some basis in terms of intensifying the property itself. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Next slide, please. If you do have questions about the planning aspects of it, I'm happy to answer, by the way, after. So these are the different iterations that we went through for the concept plan. We haven't, admittedly, we haven't changed much. There was an understanding as to what we wanted to do on the site. However, you can see here in the first concept that we had a number of the clusters were located on the south side of the access road. And not really, I don't think there was any visitor parking in that plan. Next slide, please. And then we changed, and then what you start to see here with the second one was the idea of placing the units on the other side of the road. And this one does not have the visitor parking. I don't think that the driveways were delineated. But it does, this version does have the same number of units that we ended up on, which is 32. Next slide, please. And then this is the one that essentially is what you see tonight, with a few minor modifications. Next slide. And so then this is the one that you see tonight. And what we've added, again, I said the parking was one of the things that we did change in between the meetings. But also we've shown on this concept, we do have the surveyed lines for the wave uprush and the flood line. So those are on there, and they weren't far off what we had before. So that is the current one that we have now. Again, as Paul and Josh alluded to, we haven't submitted anything to the municipality yet. So we are still doing our technical studies. We're a good ways away, or good ways through them at this point. There's a few things to tie up, but we haven't submitted anything yet. So this is strictly conceptual still at this point. That's not to say that there won't be any drastic changes, but if there's comments provided tonight, then if there's any way that we can address those comments by changing the plan, we can do that. Wave uprush. Who wants to handle that?
A wave uprush is a technical term used by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry to describe shorelines that are subject to a lot of wind pushing waves up on shore. It can be associated with flooding. So high water times and the winds push the winds up, the waves up. Yes, kind of like a storm surge, I heard someone say. Now, normally, in this fairly technical way in which you calculate that wave uprush, it's in there. You need a certain amount of fetch over a certain amount of distance, etc. And the shoreline should have a certain angle to that fetch and distance. So that will have to be reported on and confirmed. The Lower Trent Conservation Authority have given some indication as to where that would be and how much.
But yeah, and I can just add to that, they have provided that elevation, and that's what's mapped there on that plan. Next slide, please. So The developer does own the property, but I'm not prepared to answer anything beyond that. Yeah. Yep. Yes. So if I may, if I may finish the presentation, we can get to questions. Thank you. So as Josh noted, there are a number of studies. I won't go through them again because Josh went through them already. But these are the studies that we are currently preparing. And I think that's it. So now begins.
So I understand a lot of people have a lot of questions, and we have a podium here. If you want to come out and approach the podium so everyone can hear the question. You're not mic'd at your chairs, of course. So there was some interest from this one lady about things being recorded, et cetera, but using the mic, things can be heard via the YouTube live session. Thank you for the written submission, sir. And in that way, everyone can hear the same question. And hopefully that way we won't have repeated questions on the same topic. But so thank you. And let me just approach that, make sure it's on.
Is that okay? So I was noticing on the one map then that it extends, the proposed development extends approximately 40% of it into what is designated as environmentally protected land. So I'm wondering, what does environmentally protected land actually mean? Because my interpretation is it's protected against development. And then if that is the case, why then would it even be considered to be permitted to be developed?
It's a good question. The environmental protection designation doesn't necessarily follow what's on the ground. It can be very, it's not a static line. So what in the official plan, there's actually an interpretation section that speaks to this in terms of the maps. So designations and other things like that will follow discernible features on the ground, like a road or property line. Environmental protection is not as specific because certain sites may not have been ground truths. So you need to have somebody actually go out and show where the actual boundary of those features are. So that's what the accompanying environmental impact study does. The ecologist or biologist goes out, they determine where, looking at plant life and things like that, they determine where the exact location or the boundary of that feature is. And that's what that EP land is supposed to encompass. It's supposed to encompass those features. It's supposed to encompass natural hazard features as well, like your floodplains or wave uprush areas. So when you're looking at it on the designation map, it's not necessarily going to be 100% accurate. So when we go and we put our application forward, staff and review agencies like the CA will look at our submission and ensure that the line is correct.
I'm wondering if you can go back a few slides.
Excuse me, I'm just wondering, I'm hoping people maybe introduce themselves.
Oh, sure.
Just
I'm
let us know.
Suzanne Scanlon. I'm wondering if we can go back a few slides. I think it was called Current Concept. And there was a wavy line that was going through, I'm going to call them buildings 3 and 4. It kind of went like this. And I'm just wondering what that wavy line represented. It was, I don't know, a brown or a red, something like that.
Right. That's a trail. That's like a walking trail that
Okay.
we put in. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Helen Graham. I was wondering if you could comment on the low density. Is that in relation to the land that's actually developable, or is that in relation to the 3 properties that you purchased? Because as the earlier woman had identified, there's a huge amount of wetland on those properties that are included, and you seem to have put everything along the road.
That's another good question. So
And if you could then identify, sorry,
Yeah.
just as a second to that, because I think I know where you're going, what would be the density if you took out all of the protected area?
So thank you. No, it's a good question because what you're talking about is essentially gross density versus net density. And the 22 per acre that or per hectare that I noted is actually net density. So that includes, or that doesn't include any of those features where we're not going. So that's the 22. So if we were to take those out, it's actually around 12. If we were to include the wetland and the floodplain everywhere where we can't develop.
Good evening. My name's Deborah. I would like to start at sort of the big picture and talk about business. Everybody has a job to do, and we need to assess things carefully. So on the actual densification planning, generally most cities work on push-pull. Push is that there's new employment, so we need housing. Pull is when a big developer is doing his job and says, here's a plot of land, let's develop. So everybody has their job to do, but let's make sure that it is the balance and the correct thing to do. So I have a question for the town. And the question for the town is, what is the prime reason for densification in Brighton? Is it because we have employment? Is it because the big box stores are seeking to come to town, or we're seeking to bring them to town? We all know that big box stores actually have a population count. They won't come to your town under a certain population. But you can't attract big business and box stores here if we don't have employment here. So what is the driving force for the densification planning for the long term of Brighton? Because I'm not hearing any of that, but I'm also newer here, so I don't have any background information. If it's the development pushing, because this is the next development that's for them because they bought the land, they've already invested. They have a lot of work to do. They put a lot of money into this, a lot of thought. And I want to make sure that they are listening and hearing what is the concerns of the locals and the impact on the people that already live there. It's not like it's the edge of town. A lot of development is at the edge of town. It's pushing outwards. The cities grow bigger. We're infilling here. When we're infilling, we have a far different concern. We have more safety concerns. We have more disruption to the residents in place. And I need to make sure that all the talking that's being done is actually evaluated, rated, and somehow addressed back to us to just tell us how these decisions are made. You can hold a meeting, gather all the input you want, but if you didn't actually listen or take it into consideration, it's basically the developer just pushing. We want to make sure it is a process where it's transparent and that everybody gets clarity on what is happening. When we get into details, I would give you a list of 10 questions just from this small presentation, but I think other people here want to have the chance to talk about some of those details. Some of them are very small details, but you have to think about them. This is a private road. That means the end Elgin Street currently is a turnaround zone for things like waste management, Quinte West access, and other people coming in. So what happens to that? Like, is there a gated community here, or is this, does the Northumberland waste community truck have to drive into the end of the private road to turn around now? I mean, this is a dead-end community, and a dead-end community, single point of access, densification of traffic are all imperative things that have to be thoroughly studied, even just to do the development. If there's 32 dump trucks full of fill coming along to make that land buildable as your first startup, that's something you have to think about. 32 dump trucks in a small community with a few houses. We have a lot of ATVs, we have a lot of dog walkers, we have school buses, we have kids at play. All of that has to be considered. This isn't the farm field at the edge of land where you're not interfering with people's daily lives. Sorry, wearing this mask makes it harder to breathe. So I want to be sure that we are heard. And I would like to definitely present more via email or written format details that you can actually address. But could somebody today maybe just disclose, is this the push or the pull? Is this about employment requiring more housing, or is this just a developer taking the opportunity to buy a piece of land and make the money that they want to make because that's their job?
Good questions, Deborah. Yeah. Yeah, I think in the general shape of things about density. So those numbers, as you may have heard, are actually in our official plan now. So there's a density range. There's low, medium, high, and that density is depends on gross or net density, as we talked about before, or after you take out the EP areas and the street. But those numbers generally come down from the upper tier, from places to grow act province, and then the county plan, and then down to the municipal official plan that has to conform to the county plan. So those numbers are kind of predetermined a little bit. And those numbers are really trying to make sure that certain neighborhoods have compatible density. And here the drive for density is more efficiency of infrastructure, and oftentimes smaller housing units offer more affordability than larger units. So that used to be the case. I know in today's market, it sure isn't looking like that. I know townhouses are going for a surprising amount, not only in Brighton, but even more to the west of us. But traditionally, by trying encouraging some smaller units, they would be more affordable. That was always kind of the general planning effort. But I'm just answering at a high level the rationale behind some of the density that we've had in our policy. So Deborah, I think you also asked about some traffic and things like that. So yes, there is a traffic impact study requested. And oftentimes these things are carried through to a development agreement, and the development agreement will articulate how much traffic and when and where it can go during a construction phase. That might be a more specific point, but I look forward to seeing your other more detailed questions and responding to them. Hopefully that was sufficient. If Josh wants to add some more to that, fill that out, or Kent yourself, if you wish to, then feel free.
Yeah.
You can. I was just going to comment on the growth plan.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to mention about access for emergency vehicles, snow plows, garbage trucks. So the access road and the cul-de-sac at the end have been designed for them. So presumably a snowplow would go into could turn around at the end. Now we don't know what eventually the arrangement would be with the municipality and where Elgin Street ends. Certainly any upgrades that would come at the end of the street would have to be made by the proponent. So that's something that would have to be determined as we go along in this process.
My name is Wojtek Luba. I live at 12 Elgin Street East, Brighton. And I have a question regarding background of a developer. You know, who exactly is building on the subject lands? And we all know that developer is JRB Williams Enterprises, Inc. Well, I did some searches and some public searches, and it doesn't take a Sherlock Holmes to conclude that JRB Williams Enterprises Inc. stands for John, Bradley, and Ryan Williams. As we know, John Williams was a long-term mayor of Quint West, deceased in February 2020, when Brad Williams became president and treasurer of the corporation. My question is, as Bradley Williams portrayed himself as an owner of the developer, which is true, but might not be a whole true and the only true, because any owner of shares of the developer can call himself owner. So my question is whether Ryan Williams owns any shares of the developer. He's an MP to the parliament for Quint West, and developer is building on protected land just across the border. This might or might not, I'm not making any insinuation, constitute the conflict of interest. If it wouldn't be for any normal developer, but we have a higher bar for our politicians. So if I think we as a community are on a full and complete disclosure. For someone who is so deeply rooted in the local politics, we should know if the decision of the lower trend, who is located in Quint West, maybe should be overseen by the Federal Minister of Environment or Parliamentary Ethics Committee should be involved. Anyway, my question was whether the MP Ryan Williams owns any shares of whatsoever or has any financial contact to the developer.
I can't speak to that. I think I hope that you all can understand that I can't. It's above my pay grade to begin with. I don't know. But that's not something that we would be discussing tonight. I'm just the lowly planner. We're talking about I'm sure you can all respect why I can't. Thank you.
I would only suggest contacting that person's office and asking them. I think that would be a fair question to ask them. I think I would just, as a professional planner, I look at the application objectively, not necessarily who's submitting it. I don't care if it's the King of England or a lowly pauper. I'll treat the application on its merits is my professional approach.
Okay, it's Mike Martel. I live at 166 Baldwin Street, right on the corner where it's going to be the entrance to go into Elgin Street West to go up there. I got one thing stuck in my craw right at the moment is when you guys say that you're looking at density and affordable housing. We all know in this room, those condominiums that are going to be down there are not going to be affordable housing. They're going to run in between the $700,000 mark, maybe a little lower, but that's where they'll end up. If the municipality was so concerned about affordable housing, like they say they are in council meetings and stuff like that, you have 50 acres that you bought almost 10 years ago in the industrial park where the 7,000 people that are on the system are responsible for what you put in the ground, your water lines and your sewer lines. You sold 25 of them. You're buying back 3 of them because 3 of them, they didn't meet their commitments and you're buying them back. If you were serious at all about affordable housing, you would take the 25 acres that you haven't sold and you would put affordable housing in there. The municipality would hire a developer like himself, right? And develop it, turn it over to a property management company. You now get your land tax. You now get a profit of the rent that goes in there, and you would have affordable housing for families. These condominiums are 2-bedroom. The demographic that you're looking at putting in that is between the ages of 50 and 70. No family is going to be buying those condominiums at a 2-bedroom unit. Never going to happen. You're going to look for kids, places to be. The other thing is we are on a ditch system in Gosport. That there is going to have guaranteed, I'm a plumber gas fitter, I guarantee that's going to have a piping system underground for stormwater. Where is that stormwater line going to come out? Right? It's going to come out down on Price Street because it's the lower end. It only makes sense because gravity works. They'll not put in a pump system. Are you also going to put in a sand and oil separator down there? Because when that water on a fast rain comes down, and you can talk to anybody here, even our our homes. The water comes up over the ditches and floods our yards at times when it gets raining and stuff down there. So where are you going to dump that? You're not going to be able to. Garbage pickup. If you look at your own plan, you got no garbage pickup at doors. So that means that there's going to be a centralized garbage container someplace where a garbage truck can get to it. And I'll bet you 10 to 1, it's going to be at the top of Elgin Street just before you come down that road, or down by your cul-de-sac area. Well, if it's going to be down by your cul-de-sac area, we got so many foxes, we've got coyotes that are coming down this area now. You're just inviting the population. And I'm wondering if the developer actually knows that the last stage of our sewage treatment system, the constructed wetland, actually empties into the wetland that's less than 2 kilometers away from their proposed development. And we know that that wetland, nothing has been done to it for the last 30 years. It's a natural system. It's supposed to be natural, and we're overtaxing it. And I'll let somebody else speak, but I do have other questions on it. But these are points that I think that you guys are really overlooking when it comes to just the development of the roads and what's going on down there. You have no way, absolutely no way of increasing the width of Baldwin Street. Your power poles in Baldwin Street from the Gosport sign coming down are 37 feet apart from center of pole across the street to the other center of the pole. So you don't even meet your 66-foot road allowance. You'll never get Hydro One to come down there and move them poles. Hydro One hates coming down to Gosport. You're looking at putting in with these houses at least 6,500 amps. That's just for the houses at 200 amps per panel. You're not considering the street lights that are going into there and everything. The wiring system down there, they hate it. It goes everywhere. I'll have power, my neighbor doesn't. The next guy has power, the other one doesn't. They absolutely hate it. So I don't know why you guys are trying to develop in an area that's a generational neighborhood to begin with. We've got generations and family generations. It's the safest neighborhood going. You ask anybody, where do you take your kids for Halloween? Gosport. They drop them off at the top of the street and these kids run down there like it's no tomorrow. You got bus stops on every corner going down there. The traffic is just horrendous. So I'm telling you right now, it's not gonna fly with the neighborhood that's down there. You're gonna find nothing but trouble. I would look for someplace else, boys.
Wait, can I just clarify?
Just before we speak and respond, just COVID housekeeping matter. Mr. Martel, would you mind just cleaning your mic? We're gonna have to do cleaning of mics every time someone speaks, just for COVID safety. Sorry, it's already signaling you out, but I'm just trying to. Yeah, if you don't mind just cleaning it, because we have to make sure it's safe. Yeah. I know, but we have to. I know we have to follow protocol. I'm not signaling you out. I'm not a politician. Yes. Yes, and everyone has to wear a mask when they speak as well. So
okay,
sorry about that.
If I can just clarify before this.
I hope I don't get electrocuted. You feel better, girl? There you go. Okay, I'll.
Thank you so much. I don't mean to signal you out. Thank you.
Well, if I may clarify before this grows legs, we're not proposing affordable housing. I think that term came up just because Paul was trying to make a point about the background to certain policies, but we're not, this isn't an affordable housing project. Okay. So, but thank you for the comments. No.
That's what the municipality is looking for, though, is affordable housing. And so you don't fit into what the plan is looking for. First of all, I'd like to be speaking to the people here rather than you, but I guess concede. Okay, good evening. My name is Doug Chair. I live at 41 Division Street North. Some are wondering why this old guy is here to talk about development in Gosport. First, I grew up in town, but in the 60s and the 70s, I played 10 years or more hockey with the Gosport men's team. Many of the players have passed on, but clearly I remember the good times associated with the guys from Gosport and the many fans from there that supported our team. Good people, very passionate about Gosport. Very passionate about Gosport. I still have a place in my heart for the community. Second, when I was 15, neighbor took me bass fishing in Proctor's Cove, which is just beside the cove beside the wetland there. This cove is now filled in with silt and sludge. It's now unfishable, but you can still fish on the outsides of edge of the Cattail Marsh. I've done that for 65 years, every summer for 65 years. Also, myself and Steve Flindle have trapped muskrats in that wetland for over 20 years. I know this wetland well. Okay, fact, over the past 50 years, more than 66% of Southern Ontario wetlands have been lost to urban and development, drainage, and pollution. An example of this, I was around in the 1960s. The marsh on the west side of Baldwin Street, you're going down to Gosport on the west side, was drag lined and filled in to accommodate a housing development, now called Brighton Bay Estates. This was done with the approval, with the blessing of the local council of the day. I was there to protest that it was either the late 60s or the early 70s for naught. Wetlands need a buffer zone in order to function properly. The proposed development area is the buffer zone for the wetland to the north. It's a buffer zone. We've got the Ministry of the Natural Resources and Forestry, the Lower Trent. I lost faith in those agencies long ago. They're saying this is acceptable. Wetlands are unique areas. They're habitat for fish, birds, wildlife of all kinds, special plants, truly magnificent, magical places. They need our protection. The developer is asking for approval for 8 two-story buildings that would look out on these protected wetlands, 4 units in each. The buildings, the people occupying them, the lights from the building, the street lighting, vehicle traffic, noise associated with development will all be detrimental to our wetland. How many vehicles, how many people, we don't know. Some of these units were to become short-term or Airbnb, whatever you want to call them. The number of people and vehicles would increase even more. The proposed development is also in a floodplain. And anyone that's been here, we remember twice in the last 2 years, we had major flooding. The town spent thousands and thousands of dollars to protect the roads and property. Just recently, we're seeing firsthand examples of flooding due to climate change in British Columbia and in Newfoundland. This could happen here. Hope not. Okay. It's obvious that the people here, both the old timers and the more recent residents of Gosport, are opposed to this project. It would have a negative effect on the character of this community. Hopefully Mayor Ostrander and members of council will do the right thing and stop this development. The whole idea of this location or development in this location is wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Thank you.
That's okay. Just remember, everyone, to keep your masks on when you are talking. Thank you.
It's strange in the sports centers in Toronto, they can put 20,000 fans in there, shoulder to shoulder, and here we are, but I guess that has nothing to do with it. Makes you wonder.
Hello. Okay, so I'm just wondering if there's any plan in place
Could you
to,
introduce yourself, please?
oh, sorry. I'm a soft talker. Is there a plan in place to monitor the marsh post-development? Pardon me? Oh, Kathy Mahar. So I understand you're doing an environmental scan. But obviously there are some serious concerns about, you know, a long range plan for, you know, ensuring that the marsh stays healthy. So will you be doing follow-up to make sure that we're not losing different species, or that we're not losing more of the marsh? Because I've read that we're losing like a foot every few years or something to that effect. So I'm just wondering about that. Is there a plan in place?
Typically, there isn't for when development adjacent to a wetland. I'm not sure what Lower Trent, what they're doing right now in terms of monitoring this wetland, if there's any particular monitoring going on.
Okay,
Typically what we'd have is a series of recommendations from the biologist that says, you know, here's your required buffer, here's where you need to stay, you know, here's what needs to happen during construction, silt fencing and things like that. But beyond that, there typically isn't a monitoring program or anything like that.
could that be a stipulation? That
Sure,
whoever,
yeah.
like whoever takes on this building, make sure that they aren't impacting it?
And I shouldn't say that there's nothing during construction. There is monitoring that occurs, especially if there's potential for habitat for species at risk. So
Oh, that's a given.
so
I
so I
mean-
think that
Like, I don't,
so, but to answer your question, I mean it's something that we could certainly consider. You know, there's in other situations we do ongoing groundwater monitoring if there's groundwater issues. So, you know, it could be something that we could look into.
well, I mean,
Sure.
the groundwater is also an issue on, like, in and of itself, because in the research that I did, just the active building, like the construction taking place next to a wetland, is seriously detrimental to that wetland. Like, because
Right.
of the runoff and just disturbing the natural ecosystem in that area. I was wondering as well, is Ducks Unlimited aware of this at all? Like, have they been brought into the conversation, or Trent Conversation Authority, or?
No, well, Lower Trent,
Sorry.
that's definitely, yes. Lower Trent has.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm surprised they're not here today.
Well, the other thing to consider about what we're doing here is that it's outside of the application process. Like we haven't even submitted an application, so they haven't seen anything. We typically wouldn't have them for something like this, but I think moving forward, certainly if there's going to be questions like that, we would certainly try to have them.
I also have concerns about our tax, like our property taxes and that type of thing, because you'd be changing the environment of Gosport. So you're potentially adding, I guess it would be 32 additional cars plus visitor parking to a dead end community. Our roads are not constructed for that kind of traffic. So our roads would need to be redone. We have tons of walkers in our area. I mean, like, cats and dogs ran free everywhere. It's, you know, it's utopia. But if you're introducing more people into the area, more cars, more traffic, the roads are going to need to be done. Sidewalks are going to need to be put in place because we don't have any. I mean, it's wonderful that they have a walking path. But yeah, we just like walking the gravel on the side of the road. So what happens with the changes that need to take place, like the additional parking signs, the money that needs to be put into Gosport in order to accommodate all of these additional people and the maintenance for these additional properties and everything that's going to be going on? Like, will that not be coming out of our taxes in the long run? Because you're going to be spending a lot of money upgrading Gosport in order to make it a suitable area. Pardon me?
Are you asking if there's a set aside that they have?
Well, I'm wondering, are yeah, it's not
part of the plan.
like, it's a concern of mine because, I mean, okay, so they're going to be doing this development. They're introducing more vehicles into the area, more traffic into the area. They're making it a more touristy area. If these are going to be Bs and Bs, they're making it a more touristy area. Our roads there's different types of roads. Our roads are not meant for high traffic. So our roads would need to be redone.
Are you asking him if the plan is for them to have to put aside a ton of money?
Well, I'm wondering if this
yeah,
is, I'm wondering if this is
Typically,
part, like,
typically,
of your conversation, like,
yeah, typically we've asked for a traffic impact study to address some of these questions. And these questions can also be used as a terms of reference to make sure they get reviewed during the course of doing the traffic impact study.
I would also add that what you're referring to in terms of like the costs. So there are development charges that are paid to the municipality that are intended to cover a lot of those things. Certainly, if there's anything that's recommended from the traffic study in terms of upgrades, those would typically be at the expense of the applicant. But in terms of like services and things like that, like recreation services, roads, emergency services, that's all paid through development charges. So each unit, there's a calculation for a development charge that's paid back to the municipality when, prior to building permit.
I don't think I'm making myself super clear. I'm talking about beyond when these buildings come into place. Gosport itself will require more maintenance from Brighton as far as the upkeep of the roads and putting in sidewalks and, you know, a myriad of different things, the plumbing, the electrical, the everything. Like, Gosport will become a money pit because it is not set up for more housing. So it will cost Brighton more money to have this development, like, over the next period of time. So
yeah, so
that will come out of our taxes, will it not?
Well, the traffic impact study will identify what deficiencies there might be in the street and other infrastructure, and have and report accordingly as to what deficiencies there are that should be improved to accommodate the 32 unit traffic generation. To Mr. Randall's point, yes, each unit will be subject to a development charge, and the development charge goes into a reserve, and that reserve goes towards maintaining and building out infrastructure required to support growth. And we are updating that development charges bylaw next year.
And to just further respond to your question, so you mentioned traffic, but you're mentioning other things like you know,
well, it changes the environment.
Like sanitary and water and that sort of thing. We look at that, like the technical studies look at the capacity of the existing, you know, sewer mains and water mains that go to that site. They would provide us the information as to whether that infrastructure needs to be upgraded or whether there is capacity for these additional units. So that's what our technical analysis does. It goes to the municipality, their public works department or whomever reviews that information, and they determine, okay, yeah, the system can accommodate this number of units. So in those terms, that's what it would do. And then that's what we're required to do. And as Paul said, the traffic study does a similar thing where it looks at the capacity of the road to accommodate those units. So yes, there's going to be additional units down there. It's obviously going to create additional use of that infrastructure and those services. The idea is that we provide justification, or we provide technical evidence as to why that it can be accommodated. I know and people aren't
and I
gonna
know too,
buy
because
what
I
I'm
work
saying,
for
but
the government. So, I mean, I understand, how this all works. It's very short-term thinking.
well,
and,
it's I wouldn't
you
say
know,
that. I
best case
would
scenario.
disagree. I would disagree with that. It's not, but you can disagree with what I'm saying here, but that's what we're required to do in our submission. We're supposed to look at that. We don't say, okay, well, the sewage system can only accommodate 4 more units. Let's just approve this. We're going to overflow everything. We're going to tax the system. That's not what we can do. We can't do that. So that's what we're required to do.
Okay, I feel like that's very.
I think it was a
Thank
good.
you. Just wanted to correct a couple of things. So I just wanted to mention Lower Trent has looked at this from a preliminary perspective. So Lower Trent has looked at the wetland and the flood hazard, and that's been, sent to the proponents team. Can't just correct that Lower Trent hasn't reviewed the EIS in detail, but they have seen this drawing, just so everyone is aware.
What I understand, they've seen 4 drawings.
Sorry?
What I understand, they've seen 4 drawings for this development.
Yeah, they've seen the latest concept plan. Yeah, they've reviewed it.
The constraints haven't changed on any of those drawings. Aside from this is more accurate, slightly more accurate, but it's in the same area.
Hi, Jean Payne. I've listened to a lot of reasons, and I know a lot of reasons why we don't want this development, but just to get to the basics, we're hoping you withdraw your submission because the majority of people at Gosport do not want it. And there are so many reasons, environment one. And just last week in the Toronto Star, the Auditor General, Bonnie Lisk, put an article saying that the Ministry's zoning orders, which allows the ministry to bypass the town and rubber stamp, they call it, to approve things which shouldn't be approved, that they're thinking of trying to revoke the minister's zoning order so that the environment can have better protection, because this rubber stamping that's going on is causing the environment to be damaged, and they're getting away with it. And you've heard all the reasons why it's not wanted: the parking, the traffic, the buses, the kids, the snapping turtles, and it looks like the ministries aren't doing their job of protecting the environment. And that's all I want to say is I hope Brighton stops this development, and they're developing east and west. Keep going east and west. Stay out of Gosport. It's not the place for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to note to the audience, there's no plans for a minister's zoning order here. A minister's zoning order is a very specific thing that's done by the province. The applicant is submitting a zoning bylaw amendment and is going through the full Planning Act review process. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Sure. There are no plans for a minister's zoning order on this property. It's going through the full planning process through the Planning Act for zoning bylaw amendment. The town agencies and departments will be following that process and reviewing it, as I had outlined in the presentation today. So I just wanted to correct the notion of a minister's zoning order. That's a very specific thing and is not applicable here. But we do understand your comments about your concerns of your community, so we will note that. Just wanted to clarify for the record. Thank you.
My name is Patricia Scanlon. I have a couple of, I think they're quick questions. One of them, I know that 2 years ago in 2019, our municipality was fined $250,000 for non-compliance of various levels with the sewage treatment system, with nitrogen, and I can't remember which other levels being repeatedly very high. But I did not see anything when I was looking things up or trying to about when the system was upgraded sufficiently to accommodate the subsequent development that we've seen since then, as well as the proposed developments, because we got another huge development that's looking to be coming into the community off of Ontario Street as well. And having a family cottage down there, I know that many times, you know, we wake up to the stench, and that truly is the only word to be used, the stench of sewage wafting through the airwaves. So I'm just wondering if I missed something, or when was the system sufficiently upgraded to handle everything? And is it sufficient now for all of the projected developments? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so Ministry of Environment gives municipalities a little formula to work with in determining capacity for sanitary systems. And that formula has been applied. And there is actually several years capacity, yes, for all the intended developments to date. In terms of the odor issue, I'm not an expert in lagoon management, excuse me. But our infrastructure staff have been working with the Ministry of Environment in trying to make sure that our operations can be improved to control odor measures, like particularly associated with ammonia. And they've been successful. They've been successful in making those improvements, but they have been in fairly regular contact with Ministry to improve those operational efficiencies. And in fact, there is some significant funds budgeted in the capital program intended to improve sludge management, where some of the ammonia issues are derived.
Because I know certainly our system, as somebody else has mentioned, with the lagoon, the wastewater polishing and the lagoon and the marshlands there that help to filter it, we're not getting any more. And if we're getting having development that will impact that, then certainly that's a serious matter.
Sure. Again, I'm not an expert on the chemistry of the treatment train, but the constructed wetland component is essentially a polishing function. So the lagoon has done its job. The clarifying lagoon has done its job. Other components of the system have done their job for the primary and secondary and tertiary treatments. The constructed wetland is a bit of a polisher because it's discharging to Lake Ontario. Essentially, Ministry wants some controls on things in particular like phosphorus. And the constructed wetland with all the plant life is effective in bringing a uptake of that phosphorus prior to discharge to the lake. So that's kind of the general intent of the constructed wetland. Oftentimes they're used for areas where there's no receiving stream for discharge from a lagoon. There's oftentimes a constructed wetland to do that job in the event there's no receiving stream.
Okay.
So that's my hanging around engineers for a lot of years, understanding of how that's working.
So then was the system sufficiently upgraded then? You mentioned we have a few years of development growth potential. Is that based on a certain number of units that come in?
Yeah,
then?
like I say, there's a formula.
Okay.
And when you strictly follow the formula, there is sufficient capacity. There's quite a bit of capacity, actually.
Okay.
Yep.
My other question was about the 100-year floodplain lines. When I was trying to look at the maps and reconcile those with the proposed development, then does the full development lie sufficiently back from the 100-year floodplain lines?
Yes, typically you would take in most places you do a 6-meter setback, and here we have greater than a 15-meter setback, and that's to account for the wave uprush. So
Okay.
yes, we are sufficiently beyond that. That's obviously at the discretion of LTC, or the Lower Trent Conservation. So they will have the ultimate decision, not decision, but they will provide comments related to to our distance from that line.
Mhm. And thank you. And my third question, and I mean it with all due respect, but we are, I think, all aware in our society that deep pockets do speak volumes, and where experts are brought in to interpret things that I think somebody here said, determining boundaries that are not necessarily 100% accurate. To me, that indicates it can be open to interpretation, which might mean that things can be rubber stamped. So I think I'd just like to just mention that, because I certainly, in speaking with other people in the community as well, that is a concern that has come up, that money talks, big money talks loudly, and small people don't necessarily get heard at all.
And that's obviously something that's common. We hear that quite often. And what happens is that these reports that are submitted, that are done by professionals like myself, who have I have the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, that I have to uphold my code of ethics and my standards. If I don't, I can have my professional designation revoked. And engineers the same way, the professional engineers. And I'm not saying that things are not open for interpretation. There are some interpretive components to what we do. But certainly the information that's being provided to the municipality is going to be reviewed by other peers, so experts in the same field. So they're going to be looking at it. For instance, Laura Trent, who has the expertise to review the environmental impact study, will do so. The municipality has actually retained they have retained another consulting firm to review the environmental impact study as well. So there's going to be 2 layers of review of the information that we provide. And that goes the same for all the other studies. They're reviewed. Josh and Paul look at my planning report. The traffic is reviewed by other traffic engineers. So this is not that it's all just being presented and then that's the end of the story. We get the comments back from those peer review agencies or departments, and we have to respond. We have to provide, and we always there's always comments. There's always maybe a difference of opinion on a few things, and we have to meet somewhere and determine what the solution is. So that's part of the process. I get that there's a hesitancy because the applicant is obviously hired. He's hired me. He's hired the other professionals. That's part of the business. But that I can tell you that it's part of the process for that information to be reviewed.
Okay, thank you. A concern is, the old boys club, right? That's, yeah. Thank you.
Just quick comment for Ken as a professional comment, nothing personal, but I'm just speaking from the memory, from the proposal, that after the development, traffic on Elgin Street will increase, but Elgin Street will comfortably, and I think that's the correct word, will comfortably accommodate that increased traffic. What gives you that comfort that Elgin Street will comfortably?
I'm not sure what you're referring to when I said
Voika, did
that.
you want to use the mic so we can hear your question?
I heard the question, Paul. Paul, I heard the question. I heard the question.
The recording and will be recorded.
The microphone. The microphone, Luba.
Well, I was reading the proposal, submitted to the town, and one of the first pages that struck to my mind. That after completing the development, the traffic, of course, will increase. The Elgin Street will be the main street to bear that traffic, but the Elgin Street will take that increased traffic comfortably. There is no mention of Baldwin Street, which is the only connection to the what we call mainland. So you were saying that professionals work on this proposal. Try to explain to my predecessor that everything is, but just that came to my mind. If such a comfort.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Are you referring to the letter that was provided?
No, the
initial-
big proposal.
The big proposal.
I think page 3rd or 4th about traffic. But now I have a specific question about traffic. When are we gonna conduct the traffic study? Because the biggest traffic is in the summer. We are starting the winter right now, where the traffic is lower. We have lots of traffic, so boaters, tourists, etc., who take the Baldwin Street. In which month do you plan to get the traffic done, traffic study done?
I'd have to check with the traffic engineer. I think he might be using counts that have been provided by the municipality, but we'd have to look into that.
Same guy, same address. Okay, I'm going to answer a question for you, all right? You weren't here at the time, but what you gave to the lady here about the sewage and all of that. In 2011, there was a report done by Acon, big engineering firm. North of somewhere is of 150,000 we paid for it. And it was a really good study done and report done. The municipality passed it as information coming in. And they also sent that information to the MOE saying, these recommendations that they put in place is what we're going to follow. Unfortunately, one guy had an idea of saying, oh, let's put Pugus in. Well, that system failed miserably. All right. We never went back to their plan. But what's interesting is that you're talking 46 meters cube per day is what we're allowed to put through that system. And you average that over 12 months. So whatever flows come in, right, that's when you do your averaging. In 8 out of the 12 months, those flow rates are way past that amount. But because you got a couple months that are low, well, that brings down your levels to what it was 3,600 meters cube per day. All right. Now that's been standard since basically 2011 when they came out with this plan. In 2010, the population of Brighton was 10,928 people. All right. 2016, it was 11,844 people. That's an increase of 916 people. Add another 5 years at the same interest that they were putting on it at 1.69%. You come up with, once again, you come up with about 1,800 people that have been put onto this system. In that report, it stated at the current size of our system, this goes for you as a developer and the other developments that you have on the go or going to be having on the go, it puts into question because in that report, it states clearly that there's enough room on that system in 2011 for an additional 2,164 people. Okay. You're telling me then since 2011, we haven't added 2,100 people to the city of Brighton or the community of Brighton. You got to be joking. Now, the other thing is that in that report, the same as, I'll get this done, the 2020 report on the wastewater report, okay, it states that there was 2,600, it averaged out to be 2,600 meters, 2,600 and change meters cubed per day, all right? The reason given, and the only solely reason given for the drop from 3,600 cubic meters per day was that lack of rain and friggin' snow melt. Okay? But what you guys are forgetting and what you're neglecting, and it's a huge mistake, right? I know you're all happy right now, is that we're in a pandemic. The provincial park has been closed for 2 years. That park is on our system. In 2011, they had 112,000 overnight guests for the 4-month period that they had. Okay, it's nice to say that, you know, yeah, it's only 3,600 meters cubed per day, right? Oh yeah, well, we can do it. But the point is you got to treat what's getting to that plant on the day that it gets there. And when you look at the numbers and you're seeing 14,000 meters cubed per day, right, for a couple weeks at a time, you still have to treat that. Your constructed wetland, all right, we're only held responsible by law for what goes into that constructed wetland. That's where we get fined, okay? And by the way, only the people that are on the system pay for those fines, all right? It comes out of what we used to have as a $6 million budget money in our pocket, which right now I bet you is gone, right? When we started this out in 2011, we had $6 million in that account extra, okay? So you're wrong in saying that the constructed wetland is working perfectly, because it's not. We exceed those numbers every month. The E. coli levels are so high, right? And in that report, they tell us we should try to manage the wildlife in there. The 2020 report says that E. coli can't be managed because we can't manage the wildlife that's in there. That's a cop-out. You're not even trying. You actually fired the guy that was trapping the muskrats in there and said that you guys would take care of that problem. How many muskrats have you guys actually trapped this year?
I'll comment on the capacity question, because that's fundamentally what we're really having as a test for any new development, including the one we're talking about tonight. So the MOE formula talks about doing a 3-year average of your annual discharge rates. So we do our reports, we have our monthly averages, we get our yearly averages from those monthly samplings and readings rather, and then we average those out as per the MOE formula. When we average out those annual flows, it's about 3,500 cubes, 3,500 cubic meters. And yes, you're right that our limit by our MOE permission is 4,600 meters cubed.
Cube per day.
So we have about 1,000 cubes.
Yeah.
The average per capita liter rate is about 0.45 cubes, or about 0.9 per household. So that tells you the capacity we have after we deduct for existing approved development. And when you work through all that formula, there is surplus capacity. So I did those calculations.
Did you add the park to it? No, because we're in a pandemic. You said the last 3 years.
No, the park's not. The park was included in that because it's reflected in the annual flows.
It's not. It hasn't been reflected in the annual flows for 3 years.
Well,
you're on a pandemic. It hasn't been open. Once it's open and you come full bore, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's good to plan. Nobody in this room is against.
MOE says, about 3 years, they can go back to 5 or 7 if they want us to. But I looked at the annual flow rates back additional years, other than the flood years, the peak floods in 17 and 19, they were pretty stable. So
at 36 meters cubed per day.
And then we sent out the data to an independent engineer to give us a calculation as well, and they came up with the exact same calculation I did.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel confident there's capacity. And in fact, because this was a debated point in recent times, I believe we actually put a notice in the paper to that effect, or a press release out to that effect. Mm-hmm. Because I know there was some feedback, maybe from yourself including,
to
questioning that. So we addressed it.
Yeah, but like I said, You're not planning for the future. And this is where the development comes in place. You've got 32 units there that are being developed. You got another 82 units that are going over where Wayne's was, that's going to be developed. You got another 70 homes that's going up on Ontario Street where Mr. Quick is going to. And then supposedly there's another 120 units that are going in the other end.
Yeah.
Now,
And we'll continue to work with MOE on these
right,
questions.
and
And
yeah,
right
but
now,
we pay the MOE.
now MOE is really accepting that 0.45 liters per day per capita, but they're actually accepting almost like 2.25 and 0.3 because they realize that fixtures, it's in the plumbing code, you have to
I
construct
know.
with
It's
water
gallons per
conservation
minute.
devices. So the flows are much lower in a new home than they are in the existing built form.
It doesn't matter. Those fixture units, every toilet is 1.5 fixture units. Where I know all of that. I'm a licensed plumber gas fitter. And I do honestly know this for your developers and stuff. You can only occupy 65% of any size pipe with flow going through it. That's the highest amount of flow that you can actually put through it. So when they dump the 65 or your 32 units into that system, what's it going to do to the other system going up Baldwin Street? Is now that going to be overflowed or overcorrected? You know, I mean, there's all kinds of questions when it comes to that. The last one I want to say is this, because I submitted these 10 questions to you. I haven't gotten no answer, no response, but hey, thanks for sending us your email. And I've got 10 good questions here, but I can't go through them now because it'd take me too much time. But the last question I wanted to ask was this. You're mandatorily need to put in an in and an out in that subdivision because of the amount of buildings you got in there, right? That's why you have one road coming in, you got another road that's coming out. You just got to lift the pole in order to allow the emergency vehicles to go into it. Correct? Correct.
Yeah.
That was a municipal law, bylaw that was put in place when Mr. Waterhouse had his development up on the hill. And it's a mandatory. Well, okay, hang on here. Gosport is a peninsula. Take off the top of Baldwin Street and we're an island. Okay. So we have like 200 plus homes in Gosport before you put your 32 in. Okay. Where's our secondary road? How come we don't have another one coming into Gosport? You putting it in there, it's law for you to do it. You can't widen Baldwin Street at all. At all. It's going to stay that side. You'll never see sidewalks going down there. Right? Like I said, the power poles are in. You're going to have nothing but trouble down there, guys. I'm telling you. And once that sewer system overloads itself, which it will in the near future because of the way you guys are just jumping on development, and there's nobody here that's against progressive development. It's responsible progress. It's responsible development that we want to see. Not just let's grab the tax dollar, right? Because that's what a municipality has to do in order for us to grow, is to have tax dollars. Now, I'm not running for council, so I'm not up here talking about this for that reason. But I'm telling you, you're in for a shock. And the problem lies in the fact that this population number that I gave you, I don't know what it is now, but 2016, it was 11,844 people. Here's the thing. Only 7,000 people pay for anything that goes on that system. And that 7,000 people number has been the same since 2011. Somebody's copying and pasting onto every report every year. They're not doing any studies. They're just copy and pasting. Okay. So that tells me that the population of Brighton, that just about 5,000 people out of the 11,000 people are on wells and septic tanks. There's only 7,000 of us that are on the water system with a school system that has 2,500 people in it.
Well, the number of meter connections is something like 3,680, and about a few hundred of those are non-residential. So then you can multiply that by the actual occupancy of each home.
Well, it's your guys' report.
Mr. Martell, you got I haven't seen those questions yet. I'll get them to forward them on, and we'll provide
Yeah,
we'll try to provide
because
some.
it's something that you guys should really look at before you
Okay.
develop here.
We appreciate the comments. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much, guys. I'll be good.
Good day, gentlemen. I'm Randy Conley. I'm at 22 Elgin Street. You're building right off my property. Now, everything's great on paper. Now you want some reality? You see where your road is up there? 2017, 2019, it was flooded. So all your buildings below that road are going to be underwater. You got Sullivan Street has been closed. So you have no access to that property. You know, it just, the waste management, your dump for the polishing pond is right across from your property. So you're gonna build buildings, have your nice balcony looking out at the sewage. If you do anything with that shore, that's going to affect the sludge in the sewage. You may end up contaminating that whole area. You know, it's that property has been left alone for a reason. And if you're going to do something with it, that could possibly create a lot more issues than what the town's going to want to deal with. So it'll go back on the developer. So you may be walking into a big trap if you try developing that property. And you know, it's your map is showing only the one property in the zone out of the three, right? The density.
The intensification boundaries that you're talking about, yeah, that's not necessarily related to the density. The designation, the yellow color, is related to the density. It's just that there's a 42%, there's a requirement for Brighton to accommodate 42% of its growth within that red area.
But
So we're just showing that
it's
as
just in
it's
the
part.
one, it's that one piece of property though.
But it doesn't tell the whole story in terms of what is.
Everything on paper doesn't tell the whole story. Reality is what you have to.
But
go
I'm
by.
just, what I'm trying to say is that the official plan provides permissions and guidance in terms of what you can do in that yellow area. In addition, there's also an intensification boundary. It doesn't mean you can't develop outside that intensification boundary. It's just, all it is just, it's another contributing factor to the arguments for. That's all.
Yeah, where's your snow going to go? Where's our snow going to go? It always got pushed out at the end of Elgin. So down onto that property. So are you the town gonna start pushing it to the end and then coming in and taking it out for us?
Yeah, we'll be conferring with Public Works to see what their feelings are on this. So it's definitely going to be an issue.
And you know, another entrance into Gosport is, I've heard that in the 7 years I've been down there, that with the people that are down there and the amount of traffic down there, boating and everything, that there should be another way of getting in or out of Gosport. And you know, if we do have the flooding, are you planning on building up that property? or leaving it at the level it's at?
Oh, like adding fill to the
Yeah.
property? I'm not sure at this point. I
Well, like I said, up to the road
Well,
was flooded, and,
I-
and it's flooded pretty much every
I-
year.
yeah,
So,
I'm not completely 100% about whether we're going to be adding or how much fill we
but
will
if
be
you
adding
do
or
add
if we
fill,
are.
will that not affect all the other properties around you?
We would have a stormwater management plan in terms of where water is going to be collected, where stormwater is going to be attenuated and how it's going to be attenuated. So that's done through a stormwater management plan. We provide a preliminary stormwater management plan as part of the zoning bylaw amendment submission. Okay, it demonstrates where the water is going to go. We can't the water can't go off the property. We're not allowed to do that other than going to an municipal attenuation system. Or we cannot, our post-development flows can't be any greater than our pre-development flows. So if there is there's obviously going to be site alteration. So the stormwater plan accounts for how the site is going to be graded.
But if you raise that property, when we do have our spring flood, the lowlands are going to take the effect of it, right? And so that could be the houses on Queen.
Well, no, it's the site will accommodate the stormwater. So ideally we would have a better situation than what we have now on the site. And that's the intent of
But I'm
when
talking about the bay coming up. Like
Okay.
2017, 2019, it was up across the roads, all down along the bay shore. And
Okay.
that being a lowland took on some of that water.
Right.
And so it didn't affect the houses. But if you raise that land, it's going to definitely affect the houses all around.
Yeah, I disagree, but okay.
Have you lived here?
It's just, okay. Yes, I have, yeah. Right. Okay. Yep, I have been on the site, yeah. I've walked it.
Did you get your feet wet?
No, I didn't. It was a dry time of the year.
So a little over 2 years ago, in November of 2019, the municipality had a study prepared by DM Wills Associates and KMD Community Planning and Consulting. And one of the recommendations was that development proposals really look at neighborhood character so that what's being planned is compatible with the older homes. I'm not seeing that here. I cannot think of any area of Gosport that has quadplexes in it. I think the motel has 4 units, but it's been here a long, long time. Okay, it's not a recent development. That's the only one that I can think of. This is not in keeping with the character of Gosport. It's not even close. Like, you're looking at 3-story buildings. I don't know that there are any 3-story buildings anywhere else in Gosport, anywhere in the peninsula. That's new. This is a Toronto style proposal that you're bringing in. And we are not Toronto. You might not have noticed. We are not Toronto. We're a small town. Okay? And we like it that way. And we want to keep it that way. And we don't want it to be Toronto version 2.0. Okay, so I think this proposal is not in keeping with the community. And it's certainly what we need, if anything, in the general municipality is the low-income housing. This isn't going to be that either. Somebody else mentioned that. So please use your conscience and look at what's being done and what's being proposed and what the area needs, because this isn't it. Oh, the other thing I'm wondering, what plans are being made to rehome all the animals that will be displaced? And we've got red foxes, we've got white-tailed deer, we have painted turtles, snapping turtles, etc. what plans are being made because their homes are on that property? How will we be looking after them?
We are required to determine habitat for species at risk. So like a red fox or some of the other animals that you named might not fall on that list.
The turtles are.
But yeah, certainly certain turtle species are. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what the biologists are supposed to look at. So that's if there is habitat, we can't develop within that habitat.
Right, well. Yeah, there's a lot of them there, and we need to look out for them.
Is there anyone here besides the developer that is in favor of what's being proposed? Oh, speak now. Thank you. Nobody wants it.
So can I ask a question of our community, because I'm new here, so I'll put my head out of the foxhole for you. What kind of development are you happy with? This land, if it had a different kind of development, nobody has mentioned it. Are you all just saying, get out of here, go away, we don't want you? Or are you going to think about the business development of the town and offer some suggestions as to what is acceptable? Is 0 acceptable? Or is a small couple houses acceptable? Have you thought about
They had
this?
already turned down 2 houses proposed for that property. It's the town that's not allowing the small building. They want this big building.
So can we please also give our input to the town and to the developer, what you do envision is acceptable,
A park could be.
other than just 0, because 0 isn't going to necessarily help anybody move forward.
You think the part of undeveloped land, it's not unreasonable.
Yeah,
So,
and several people here have not come forward. We've heard from some people twice, and some people here that haven't had a chance to speak about these. Daryl? You come forward. Dale.
I've been there, I've been down there for going on 50 years. And you look down below my house, apparently there's gonna be one of them houses 15 feet beside mine. 15 feet over. That's gonna be the dual. Down below, it's all wetlands. There's every kind of there's snapping turtles, foxes, deer, birds like crazy, herons. I had a heron on my deck there last week. This is absolutely stupid. And I also will have to say, on Baldwin, I go down and pick my granddaughters up at the school bus. And one day, the high school bus came down behind that was the public school bus. I was parked across from this guy's house here. And I thought I better move away because there was a flatbed coming down with a truss, the flatbed with a truss of the house coming down Baldwin. And he turned and he went west on Elgin, and there was no room. There's no room for a flatbed transports dump trucks. There just isn't. And then you've got Harper Street. Got a little tiny bridge up. What's it going to be like for town? And then when you guys have done nothing for Gosport, I shouldn't go there maybe, but that's how I feel. So please, let's not do this. Think of the snakes, the frogs, turtles, creatures that are living down there. That's the whole thing. We're talking about there's the houses. Let's think about the wetlands, the water flowing in from the marsh.
You guys don't care. I wish you would.
Well, I think we've covered a very wide scope of issues and covered off a lot of very pertinent facts. And many have spoken very, very well. And I really think it's an admirable community of Gosport that has been demonstrated tonight. So a lot of issues that need to be responded to, not only by the proponent, but the proponent's specialists and consultants. And Mr. Connolly's given me some homework as well about the road closure and some other related issues and some history. And Michael, I am going to follow up on some of your technical questions as well through some of the ACOM reports. So thank you for. I can share with you the math, sure. Yep. And anyway, so thanks. We'll conclude that for tonight. And thank you for making such a big effort on dreary night. So take care and drive safely home.
Thank you, everybody.
That's how serious they are about keeping the atmosphere and the community. These are transport. A lot of us are. A few that are full time here, but it's a generational neighborhood.